Mic test. I will be talking about the different theories in juvenile delinquency. So before we start, there is an important need to understand what we mean when we say theories. Basically, theories are developed in order to explain the existence of a phenomena or an occurrence, and they help us better understand why such phenomena exists or occurs. For the part of juvenile delinquency, these theories tend to assist several lawmakers or even criminology students and practitioners in the law enforcement field, wherein they use these theories to guide them in better understanding several cases that are happening in the real world. An example is when a child or a CICL commits a crime, the big question that they are wanting to address is, bakit nagawa ng bata yun? Well, there are so many reasons on why a child offends. And these theories help the social worker, the police officers, even the officers of the court in understanding and better dealing with these children. So before we go to the several theories, in the criminology profession, there have been existing three major approaches towards explaining delinquency. Well, how it's not only on delinquency, but even approaches in explaining crimes or why do crimes happen. And these approaches basically are divided into three main groups. And I believe you are familiar with this. We have the biological, the psychological, and the sociological approaches. Or in other references, simply put, biological theories or biological approaches pertain to the explanation of crime or delinquency caused by our genes or heredity. Psychological, on the other hand, as posited by several psychologists, believe that a person or a child commits a crime because of their mental attitude and behavior. Sigmund Freud, as one of the leading founders of psychology, believes that it is in the mind of the person on why he commits a crime. Kumbaga, nasa kanyang pag-iisip or pag-uugali. Although we understand that there are several factors on why a person thinks in that way. So, simply put, the psychogenic or psychological approach focuses on explaining children committing crimes because of the way they grew up, kung paano sila lumaki, and the way they were treated when they were younger. And of course, finally, the third approach is the sociogenic or sociological approach or theory. There are several theories in sociology. Basically, it is one of the most or widely used theory in explaining crime and delinquency in the field of criminology. Well, simply put, sociological approach tries to explain that a person or a child commits a crime because of his or her own environment or the influences surrounding the environment of such person. So that is the summary. So again, biogenic or biological. The highlighted words here are faulty biology. So I believe you understand the meaning of genes or heredity, that a child inherits or minamana niya yung kanyang genes galing sa kanyang pamilya or parents, biological parents, father and mother. And of course, the father and the mother also inherited their genes or heredity from their parents also, and so on. So we have several studies trying to claim that if you come from good gene family, there's a high tendency that you also will inherit the genes that was passed on by your forefathers. Even in this field, several studies wanted to support that there is a genes for criminal behavior or even juvenile behavior. Soon, you're going to encounter several principles in juvenile delinquency trying to explain that it is having criminal parents, wherein it is the greatest influencer on why a person commits a crime. So yan, that is for biogenic approach. Another explanation, as presented on the second slide, states here that the offender is hereditary defective. He suffers from endocrine imbalance or brain pathology. So these terminologies basically are talking about the composition of our bodies. And basically, this composition or parts of our body are inherited from our parents. So, pag i-compare natin ito, if you have heard of yung nature versus nurture, biogenic approach talks about the nature aspect. Ayan, so that's biogenic. Of course, the second one, as we talked a while ago, is the psychogenic approach. In the presentation, it says here that the offender behaves as she or he does in response to psychological pathology. So the psychological pathology is a part of our being which was developed as we grow older. So the basic explanation here is there are several principles or yung mga personalities na nag-propose that as we grow older, we develop a certain kind of personality that affects also our attitude and our predispositions to our environment or our actions. And in this theory also, ini-explore niya yung mga bata na napabayaan, yung mga bata na lumaki sa hirap, yung mga ganyan. Yung mga bata na inabuso at a very young age. And they were trying to propose that kung ano yung experiences mo nung bata ka will greatly influence kung ano yung perception mo or even your decision making when you encounter something in your life. It's just like pumasok ka sa paralan nung elementary ka and then pinagtatawanan ka kasi yung mga damit mo sira-sira. Now, how would you respond to those incidents? Ano yung paano ka magre-react doon? Well, according to psychological approach, it says there that if you have faulty mindset, pag hindi maayos yung pagpalaki sa'yo, there is a high tendency that you will rebel or you will not react in a proper way. Yan. So another slide talks about personality problems. Ito yung isa sa mga main emphasis ng psychological theory. Wherein, sabi dito, juvenile misbehavior is presumed to be a response, a natural response of your personality problems. Now, paano ba nade-develop ang personality problem? There are so many ways, but based on psychological approach, it is developed on how a person interacts with other people and how he develops his thoughts basing on his interactions. So there are several theories that we will cover pertaining to psychological theories. Now, the third one is sociogenic. Sabi ko nga, this is the common kasi one of the greatest influential or influencing factor is our environment. So kung saan ka banda o yung lugar kung saan ka lumaki, yung tao kung nakapalibot sa'yo, even the place where you grew up directly or greatly influences your behavior. So if you are brought up in a environment wherein we follow the principle of survival of the fittest, there's a high tendency that you develop several behaviors that are not the same with the norms or standards of society. There you go. So that's for the summary. So another, sabi dito, in juvenile delinquency, you'll also encounter these topics on youth gangs. Bakit nga ba nag-create ng gangs? Bakit sila nag-perform ng kanilang grupo? Well, it will be supported by sociological theories. So much for that. We are now going to deal with individual theories. And these theories, sabi ko nga kanina, will help us explain and understand, okay, bakit nangyayari ang juvenile delinquency on why children commit crimes. So the first here is the social class theories. Now, a simple tip in understanding the theory is the title or the name of the theory itself. Ang pinakamadaling paraan para maintindihan is to look into the words or the name of the theory and try to break it down and understand by translating the name of the theory into its basic or yung root component, like this one, social class. Basically, this is a sociological approach theory or sociogenic approach. Social meaning meron siyang involvement sa society. Meron siyang concern sa interaction ng isang tao. Ang basic definition kasi ng sociology or sociological theories is the person to another person, to the society, and their interaction with each other. Kung ano yung magiging result ng interaction nila, well, dyan madedevelop. And of course, the word class may be translated to status or yes, your status in our societies. Basically, there are three accepted classes in society, wherein you may belong to the lower class, the middle class, or the upper class. So the first social class theory that we are going to explore is the social disorganization theory. Ano nga ito? Okay lang ba, paste na? Dati ka stuck. Mabablind ako ngayon ko mga ang kamutikyuk ng agnek sakba. Tapos na pinpintas di presentation mo. Kano mga ikaw ngayon dito? Print ang kanto. Puding ko tata. Nakapos okay lang yan. Tapno mayat tani maganggala sana. Na-miss ko ngayon agsaw-saw. Okay, nakapusot na ito yung play. Ito yung ma-play. Hindi ito okay na. Ito yung mantikas tapos sa classic ko bigat. Nga.
Nasaan ka dis? Kaya mag-answer. Kap-answer kita ni Judy na kanya.
Kung nagarang yung module na.
So, garod. So, mga kagaray siya. Kita makot ni Manong.
Nya ko na.
Case 2. If Mr. X was granted parole after serving a minimum sentence
Siya ko dahil
of 6 years but was eventually rearrested for having violated the conditions of his parole, how many years is the unexpired portion of his maximum sentence? If his penalty was 600 to 1400. Write computation on your answer.
Siya ko nangaramid dita. Uy, baka gawa ni Sir Ibis.
Susurod lang.
Sige.
Baka may ganun.
Baga mga umay dito alam na julugan na dito anda X-cup. Dito iba nga PowerPoint mo kat dyan pa-send mo. Sige. Mabalin ba nga usarak dito nga nagpa-review ako? Dito
Mabalin dito yung naalaan pag zumat mo.
Ginal-nalpas mo ngayon.
Itlinin at sayang sa
Agul lang ata.
Kasi siya na may ganun sa timing na PSYCHOGENIC.
Agul lang.
Pinsay mo ba dito sa ibang?
Dito'y? Adamot dito'y. Awan, gusto nga awan ti mabuiboy. Busy akong lang ganyan.
Awan ti USB dito.
Aday, jay. Damdama ko. Palpas akong kadito ito naramid mo.
Kapag mabayag pa dito, istorya mo. 1 hour dito.
Mano ba nga oras dapat dito?
1 hour. Dapat na 3 hours dito. Okay lang. Itong kandiday na question. Ito question na dyan, estudyante na day, yung nalain na day. Itong kandiday enhancement activity or outcome. Based on the terminologies presented, what are the two most significant terms? Ay, sino ka tak-adi-dagi ito?
Agrugi ako. Tanagbayat dito nga theory. Na-miss ko nga explain.
Hindi kita mag-grugi ka pa lang.
I'm sorry, let us continue. So, the first sociological theory is the social disorganization theory. This theory is proposed by two personalities, Clifford Shaw and Henry Mackay. So, ano ba ang pinaka-main idea? Sabi ko kanina, we are going to break down the title. So, social meaning the society, and the word disorganization meaning the society is disorganized. By the way, in explaining theories, there are two major types of theories. You have there the micro theories and the macro theories. When we say micro theories, these are theories that were created to explain individual or personal reasons for committing crimes. So, itong mga theories na ito are personal, like it's the reason why you commit the crime is it's because of yourself. For example, the other main theory is the macro theories. These macro theories are general theories wherein they tend to explain the condition of the entire society. Parang ano siya, encompassing na theory wherein it will cover the explanation of the phenomena in a certain group of people, in a certain community, or in a larger society, or even an entire country for that matter. So this social disorganization theory is categorized under sociological approach, and it is also considered a macro theory kasi ine-explain niya ang condition ng isang society. So sabi dito, juvenile delinquency will occur or will exist if the society is disorganized. The most common example that I use in this particular theory is that a squatter area or people living in squatters area. Ano ba ang characteristics na meron doon na pinopropose ng social disorganization theory? Sabi dito, mangyayari ang juvenile delinquency if children live o naninirahan sila sa tinatawag nila na disorganized areas or the law or the norms cannot control the youth, or there is an existence of extreme poverty and deterioration of buildings or health facilities or even schools or even recreational facilities. So in short, this social disorganization theory tries to explain to us that nagkakaroon ng crime kasi yung society mismo hindi na ito magandang society kasi merong mga factors na nag-exist. Yung pinakaunang factor is yun nga, hindi siya organized. Paano nagiging disorganized ang isang society? Well, to help us understand this, they conducted a experiment. Basically, these are the Chicago school theories, wherein they went to Chicago and they divided the place in Chicago into several areas. If you are familiar with the Chicago area project, ang ginawa nila dito is ito yung kanilang division, 5 divisions. Yung loop 1, as you see in the image on the left, explains that ito yung CBD or Central Business District. The assumption is since CBD yan, maraming tao, maraming interaction, dyan ang pinakamataas ang crime. However, when they conducted the research, they found out that they were wrong. They found out that yung pinakamataas na lugar kung saan nangyayari ang crime is the second zone. They call it the zone in transition or transitional zone. And this zone is having or showing the characteristics that is explained by social disorganization theory. Ano yung nakasulat dito? Recent immigrant groups. Ibig sabihin nun, there is a high rate of turnover of people. Ibig sabihin, hindi mapirmi yung mga tao na nandun. Palipat-lipat sila. Wala silang permanency sa lugar. So ano bang nangyayari pag ganun nangyayari? Like yung mga nagtatrabaho sa isang construction facility, merong kontrata ng 6 months. Pero syempre, pag natapos yung kontrata, kailangan nilang lumipat sa ibang lugar. So what happens is, wala silang permanent address. And when they go to a new place, of course, bago sila doon, wala silang kakilala, then they tend to be victims. Or even, in order to protect themselves, they become the suspect or the criminals. So, yung high rate of turnover of people, or even the mixture of people in one place, also breeds or creates problems. Of course, that would be crime and even delinquency. Another, of course, is extreme poverty. So, yung immigrant groups na yan, since hindi sila naka-settle or stable, there is a high tendency that they belong to low-income families. And as we all know, in the early history of delinquency, they thought that pauperism or poverty is the main cause of juvenile delinquency. So again, ano pa yung nandyan? There is a factory, there are abandoned buildings. So these are the characteristics that was presented by social disorganization theory. Now to summarize, sa unang theory na na-encounter natin, ano ang una nating maiisip pag na-encounter natin ang social disorganization theory? First is on the name. The society is disorganized. Second, why is it that it is disorganized? Because it has the following characteristics. Una, there is extreme poverty or high rate of poverty. Second, there is deterioration of buildings, maraming abandoned buildings, yung mga bahay, dikit-dikit ang mga yan, yung mga bahay hindi yan made of concrete, or even if made of concrete, halo-halo yung mga nandyan. Third, there is a mixture of ethnics. They call it ethnic heterogeneity. Ibig sabihin nun, maraming mga iba-ibang tribes or cultures na nandyan at hindi sila nagkakaintindihan. And fourth, there is a high rate of turnover. So accordingly, by Clifford Shaw and Henry, by the proponents, Clifford Shaw and Henry McKay, kapag nakatira ka sa lugar na ito, mataas ang tendency na ikaw ay maging juvenile delinquent. There you go. That is the explanation of social disorganization theory. The society is disorganized. Another theory that is belonging to the social class theories, one of the famous in our board exam is the anomy theory. Ito ang isa sa pinakaunang sociological theories na na-create. Sino ang nag-create nito? Well, no other than David Emile Durkheim, or others they pronounce it as Durkheim. So sino itong si Emile Durkheim? He's French, and his proposition is that the main cause of crime or delinquency is the act of normlessness. So ito yung pinaka-ginagamit na word. The state of normlessness in the society, or kawalan ng norm. So ano nga ba ang norm? By the root word of norm can be explained in the word normal. Kung ano yung normal sa society, kung ano yung acceptable behavior sa society. So kapag nawalan na ng norm sa society, kung hindi na natin alam kung ano ang normal, ang acceptable behavior, then nagbe-breed daw yan ng crime. Remember, this theory is created as early as the 1920s. And he already wanted to explain that kapag ang isang society, wala na silang morals, wala na silang standards, hindi na nila alam kung ano ang tama at ano ang mali sa isang society, then it will breed crime. Kaya ang sabi sa root word na ito, yung that's none, and nomos means norms. Basically, it means the absence of norms, or as he put it, the breakdown of social norms. Ayan. So anomy is another macro theory because it explains that if in a society there is absence of norms, okay, let's cite an example of a norm. Well, in the earlier society, it's a very taboo that you are going to observe drunkards. Pero, as time progresses, nagkaroon ng TV na commercialize yung mga alak, even using beautiful women to entice yung mga mag-iinom. Yung norm natin na bawal ang alak, naging acceptable. So, nagbago yung norm. But that's not one of the worst examples that we can use. But based on that example, we are going to observe that in every society, they have norms that would either be unacceptable during their time, but became acceptable during our time. Like ngayon, homosexuals and the creation of other sexes before is very taboo. Napaka-taboo niyan. But as of now, the society is slowly accepting, okay, such condition. Ang worst dito, ang problema dyan is if that norm is already unacceptable in the society, it creates this condition of anomy, or the absence of norms. So he summarized it by trying to explain that anomy occurs when individuals cannot find their place in the society, or there are no clear rules for them to follow. So i-summarize natin, sabi ni Emile Durkheim, nagkakaroon ng anomy, or yung theory, ini-explain niya na nagkakaroon ng crime or delinquency kapag nawalan ng norm ang isang society. Now, to support this theory, Another theory na sumunod dito, halos parehas sila ng concept, is the strain theory. Another popular theory in the field of criminology. Well, ang unang nag-propose nito is si Robert Merton or Robert King Merton. Ano ang kanyang idea? Sabi niya dito, lahat tayo, meron tayong tinatawag na dreams or ambitions in life. However, not all of us are given the chance or the opportunity to achieve such dream or goal in life. And as a result, we feel frustrated. Now, based on your frustrations, what will be your reactions? Either you're going to obey the rules or you're going to violate the rules. So the key word proposed by Robert Merton is the word frustration. Kasi sabi nito, gusto nating meron tayong maabot, which is universal. Gusto nating makapag-aral, gusto nating magkaroon ng trabaho, magkaroon ng material things. Pero sabi nga ni Merton, hindi lahat ng tao naaabot ang kanilang goals or dreams in life. So ano mangyayari? Nagkakaroon ng frustration. So these frustrations will trigger someone to commit crimes. So in the aspect of social or juvenile delinquency, ang mangyayari dito, itong mga kabataan, like say for example, gusto nilang cellphone. Pero dahil mahirap sila, hindi nila afford ang isang cellphone. Anong mangyayari? They will find means for them to achieve their goals in a deviant manner or a deviant method. So, basically, meron tayong tinatawag na sources of strain or yung pinanggagalingan ng strain. 4 po yan. The first source of strain is talking about the failure to achieve positively valued goals. So, nandyan yung word na nag-fail ka. Hindi mo na-achieve ang isang goal na gusto mong makamit. Like, you wanted during your high school to be the prom queen. You wanted to graduate as a valedictorian. The only problem is, you were not able to achieve it. Ano bang nangyayari doon? That's the source of strain kasi. Well, ang mangyayari doon is the word frustration. You will be frustrated. Now, once you are frustrated, how would you react? Yan ang focus ng strain theory. The reaction towards strain will determine whether the person or the child commits a crime or not. Okay, so what's important here is to understand how would you react to the state or the sense of frustration that you have encountered. And if you react on a negative way, you will lead to committing crimes or violating rules. Another source of strain is the disjunction of expectations and achievements. Almost the same doon sa una. Wherein hindi mo na-achieve ang expectation mo or achievement mo sa buhay. Like, you wanted to graduate in college within 3.5 years or 4 years. But unluckily, you graduated for 6 years. So anong nangyari doon? You were frustrated kasi nakita mo na yung mga kabatch mo. Graduate na, nag-board exam na, naging pulis na. Pero ikaw, naghihirap ka pa rin na nag-aaral. So what happens there is you feel frustrated. Now, when you are frustrated, what will you do? Yun ang palaging tanong. So your reaction to your feeling of frustration will determine whether you become a law-abiding citizen or a law-violating citizen. The third source of strain is the removal of positively valued goal or stimuli from the individual. So ito naman kabaliktaran. You value something but it was eliminated or removed from you. So like the loss of a loved one or a parent. You're studying and gusto mong pag-graduate ka sila ang magmamarcha sa'yo. Ang problema, hindi ka pag-graduate, biglang nawala yung loved ones mo, na-loss mo sila. Again, you will feel frustrated. The next question, what will you do? And finally is the presentation of negative stimuli. Maganda na ang takbo ng buhay nyo or buhay mo, and then suddenly yung family nyo encountered parang negative events. So these are all the sources of strain. Now what is even more important here is your reactions to these frustrations in your life. It was not presented in this PowerPoint, but merong na-identify na 6 na reaction. Of course, yung pinakauna na maganda is the word conformity. You can find other sources to confirm the explanations. The word conformity is since you were frustrated kasi nung high school ka, nag-agree kayo na magkakabatch nung high school na pupunta kayo sa UC. Doon kayo mag-aaral. The only problem is, nung sinabi mo sa mga parents mo, hindi nila kayang pag-aralin ka sa UC. So, na-frustrate ka. Now, what will you do? Or how would you react? In explaining conformity, you would still go to college even if you did not enroll in UC o bumagsak ka sa ibang school. But you still challenge yourself and you still continued studying. That is conformity. Ibig sabihin ng conformity, you are going to accept the goals of the society and you're going to accept the means to achieve the goal. So, pag makikita nyo sa mga images, if you're going to explore the reaction to frustration, parang positive, negative. Yung kanyang it's an X and Y axis. Now, this conformity is very good. Kasi, even if you feel frustrated, you will make positive reactions. You'll challenge yourself, you'll still abide the law. The remaining reactions to frustration are already negative. Like, you have there the word rebellion, wherein you entirely dismiss the norms of society or the goals of society. You also have their retreatism or ritualism. Common ito sa mga kabataan wherein they retreat into the world by joining gangs and fraternities or sororities and brotherhoods. And they create their own rules. That's retreatism actually, even ritualism. Another unique reaction to frustration is the word innovation. Well, this is common in organized crime groups wherein they tend to commit the crimes in illegal ways, but it is in a more professional way. So you innovated. Ibig sabihin nun, you failed to achieve the goal in the legal means and you're going to react, okay, in a more sophisticated or more innovative way. There you go. So to summarize, the strain theory posited by Robert Merton, this theory attempts to explain why people become delinquents or why people commit crimes, because they have dreams to achieve, they have goals in life, but they were not given the opportunity or the opportunity is not there. So what happens is they feel frustrated. Because they feel frustrated, they would react in a negative way, or they would not do it in a legal way, or they would not do it by the dictates of the norms of society. Instead, they either innovate or they retreat into their own worlds. There you go. That is the explanation for strain theory. Let's move on to the fourth social class theory. We call it differential opportunity theory. This was proposed by Richard Cloward and Lloyd Olin. Now, title again, it says there that differential opportunity. So by the word differential, root word is different. There's something different. There's something wrong with the opportunity. So simple as that. Merong mali sa opportunity ng isang tao na binigay sa society. So, we will encounter now the 3 classes wherein ano bang nangyari dito. Ang subculture nagpo-flourish sa lower class. Bakit nga ba? So, the explanation by differential opportunity theory is like this. The middle class of society, they're the ones in the middle and they have the means and the opportunities. Separated themselves from the lower class. So, parang nilayo nila ang sarili na sa lower class. Bakit? Because their aim is not to belong to the lower class, but to belong to the upper class. Because someday they are hoping and dreaming that they will one day become also an upper class. Now, what about the upper class? Well, the upper class, of course, will do everything on their power, on their grasp, in order to maintain on the upper class. So, anong nangyari doon? The middle class and the upper class, magkasama na sila, leaving behind the lower class. Yan ang meron sa lower class. Walang opportunity. Different or differential. There's an imbalance of opportunities between the three strata. So anong mangyayari? The lower class tends to create their own subculture or their own groups, their own rules, their own means for them to survive. So yan ang napaka-harsh ng society. Kasi yung classes na yan, kasi yung lower class, wala silang magawa. Okay? Mostly in all other countries, unlike here in the Philippines, we are still lucky because even if you belong to the lower class, we are in a state of democracy that you will study hard because of your hardship and perseverance. You could still belong to a middle class or an upper class. But in other countries, it doesn't work that way. So again, balik tayo sa theory. Sabi dito, yung success ng isang class sa society, hindi siya na-distribute ng maayos. Most importantly, yung success is only available in the middle and the upper class and leaving behind the lower class. So sabi dito, illegitimate success are more distributed than legitimate ones. So pag na-encounter niyo yung word na gangs, syndicates, or organized crimes, usually nagfo-flourish yan sa isang lower class society, sa isang underclass society. So there you go. That is the explanation of the differential opportunity theory. As covered also, sabi dito nandun yung word na subculture. Well, the basic example of subcultures are gangs. You know, yung nasa mga theorists ng juvenile delinquency, they are fascinated on how gangs operate. And they wanted to explore ano bang mga klaseng mga subcultures or gangs ang nag-exist. Una, meron tayong tinatawag na criminal gang. Okay? Meron din tayong tinatawag na conflict gang. At meron din tayong tinatawag na retreatist gang. Actually, it is arranged according to severity. So, yung pinaka-severe, of course, is the criminal gang. Mas mababa yung conflict gang ng konti. Pinakamababa ang retreatist gang. Na bakit nila kinakategorize? Bakit nila gustong i-explain na ganito ang level? Well, in order for them to understand how these groups, okay, operate, kung ano yung norms nila, kung ano yung rules nila, ano yung behaviors nila, ano ba yung goals nila, kung bakit na-create nila yung group na yan. So for the criminal gang, makikita nyo dyan, it emerge or it exists in areas where there are conventional and non-conventional values. Ano ba itong conventional na ito? Conventional meaning the values or the rules that have been established long even before. Ito yung mga kultura na ginagawa natin noon pa man. Non-conventional are the modern or the new means or the values that we employ in our society. So this type of subculture gang is a stable one because marami sila, malaki ang kanilang scope ng illegal activity or operation, and marami silang pera kasi yung the scope of their activities is speak for itself. So this type of subculture will tend to evolve into syndicates or organized syndicates, wherein they tend to become more sophisticated, their operations become more widespread, okay, and even global. And of course, these syndicates tend to become organized crime groups. Yan na, pag organized crime groups na, masyadong malawak na ang kanilang saklaw. So yan ang explanation ng criminal gangs as a one type of delinquent subculture. Conflict gang, on the other hand, also is created just for them to protect themselves. Just like nasa isang school ka and you belong to a gang, na kapag marami kayo, parang ang tibay ninyo na ang hirap nyong buwagin. Kasi nga, you're belonging to a group. as compared kapag mag-isa ka lang. So the conflict gang's main purpose of existence is just a source of identity. That if you belong to this gang, it's as if you are indestructible. It's as if napakahirap mong buwagin. I remember during the early 2000, ang pinakasumikat na gangs, international, even local, are the Bloods and the Crips. They are considered conflict gangs because the Bloods and the Crips, yung mga gangs na ito, are only for identity. Meron silang sariling initiation, yung mga ganyan. Now, can conflict gang innovate and belong to a criminal gang? Well, definitely yes. If the conflict gang will tend to be more stable, more integrated and more organized, like yung gangs na ito, ang ginagawa lang, nakikipag-away sa ibang gang, diba? Nagkakaroon sila ng mga gang wars, mga ganyan. But if these gangs tend to already increase their illegal activities, like nagiging runner sila ng drugs, nagiging seller, illegal drugs, well, then they can become already criminal gangs. Kapag naging maganda yung kanilang hierarchy, lang identified yung mga bosses nila, then it will become a criminal gang. However, if it remains only for purposes of identity, it will only become a conflict gang. And finally, the least type of gang are retreatist gangs. If you remember in the theory of Robert Merton, sabi nga natin, there are several reactions to frustration and one of which is retreatism. So, the characteristic of this retreatist gang is they are unsuccessful even in legitimate and illegitimate means. So, parang very minor type of gang. Sabi pa dito, they retreat in the world of sex, drugs, and alcohol. So, ito yung typical also na type ng mga gangs and fraternities na para lang they group themselves and they share common objectives. Alam nyo ba na sa theory ng juvenile delinquency, they are trying to propose that itong mga bata na nasasama sa mga gangs na ito, they share the same problems or they share the same reasons on why they join gangs. And of course, yung pinaka-common according to research na rason is yung lack of parental guidance or even lack of parental attention or having broken homes or broken families. Yung mga ganyan. So these are the common features or characteristics. So like yung bata hindi pinapansin sa bahay, kawawa or wala palaging parents, yung mga ganyan. Kaya pag dumating siya sa school, hindi pa siya nagpo-perform sa academics or even sa extracurricular activities or sports. So nawawalan siya ng identity. In order for him to cope up, it's either he joins groups, okay? Or even he drops out of school. Kaya common yung out of school youth natin dito sa Pilipinas. And anong mangyayari? Nakikigrupo din sila sa kapwa niya out of school youth. So yan. So napalayo tayo sa topic natin na differential opportunity theory, but covered kasi yan ng subculture theory. So to summarize this another social class theory, sabi natin sa title pa lang, there is something different or there is something wrong with the opportunity that is given by the society. That is the reason why nagkakaroon ng crime. So that covers our social class theories. We started with social disorganization. The society is disorganized. Ibig sabihin nun, there is intense or extreme poverty. Halo-halo ang mga tao, nakatira sa isang squatters area. Followed by the anomy theory of Emile Durkheim. There is this act of normlessness, kawalan ng norms. Hindi mo alam kung ano ba ang role mo sa society bilang isang bata, bilang isang lalaki or babae, ano ba talaga ang role mo. And then followed by strain theory by Robert Merton, trying to explain that lahat tayo may pangarap, pero hindi lahat naaabot ang pangarap kasi hindi tayo parehas ng opportunity. And finally is of course the differential opportunity theory. If you observe, these theories share common characteristics. And well, it involves macro theories. Okay, and it involves the interaction of the child or the person to his society or to his environment. Kaya nga siya sociological theory. Now, the next theory that you're going to encounter is the class conflict theory. Almost the same with social, differential opportunity theory, but it's more specific. It's more specific in nature. It is proposed by Richard Kinney and William Chambliss. And ito yung kanilang main proposition. Sabi dito, the causes of crime are the social and economic forces operating within the society. Well, to tell you, nagsimula ang theory na ito kay Karl Marx. Nagsimula ang theory ito sa concept ng socialism. Even the concept of communism. Yan. So ano bang meron? Still, we follow the strata, the lower class, the middle class, and the upper class. If you look at the title of the theory, sabi dito, class conflict. So anong madiderive natin? There is conflict. Okay? There is conflict in the different strata of society. Well, for this theory, they use the word clash. Okay? Clash. There is clash of the different classes of society. Dito nyo rin ma-encounter yung famous concept natin na the poor gets poorer and the rich gets richer. So, ni Karl Marx, pinopose niya na nagkakaroon ng crime kasi merong disparity, merong uneven distribution ng wealth sa society. Kaya nga sabi dito, social and economic forces. In his proposition, yung tinatawag nila na bourgeois or bourgeoisie or bourgeois, ito yung mga upper class. Okay? Yung mga lower class, yung working class, they call them the proletariat. And sa proposition ni Karl Marx, dalawa lang ang kanilang class. Anong nangyari? They constantly clash or fight with each other. Alam niyo ba ang proposition niya to eliminate crime? Sabi ni Karl Marx, kapag tanggalin natin yung classes na ito, pag lahat tayo pare-pareho, walang mayaman, walang mahirap, then crimes could be eliminated. So several countries adopted this, like of course you have the Russia, you have the China, and even up to today you have the North Korea. These societies or these countries follow the concept of communism because they support class conflict theory. Ano bang sinusuportahan nila? Gusto nilang magkaroon ng equal treatment or parang pare-pareho tayo lahat sa society. But of course, we have observed that these societies also fail. Okay? Hindi naman sila nagiging successful. Kasi, ang labas niyan, nagkakaroon pa rin ng division yung society. Yung mayayaman, sila pa rin ang magkakasama. Yung mahirap, sila rin dan ang magkakasama. Kaya nga mapapansin nyo sa mga sociological theories, yung thought na yung birds of the same feather flocks together, yung you group yourself, you identify yourselves to those people whom you share traits or characteristics with. So sumasama ka or napapabilong ka kasi parehas kayo ng situation, parehas kayo ng status, okay? Or culture na fina-follow sa buhay. So there you go, that is the class conflict theory. Merong clash, okay, between the different classes, particularly the lower class and the upper class. Okay, another theory. By the way, the class conflict theory is a macro theory just the same. Now, I'm going to present a micro theory this time. So again, ano ba ang micro theory? A micro theory tries to explain the existence of crime individually or personally. So this example here, differential operation theory, as proposed by Hewitt and Rigoli. Ano ba ang kanilang concept? This is more personal. Sabi doon is yung root word niya, differential operation. There is something different. There is something wrong on how children are being oppressed. Well, this is a theory that is suited in juvenile delinquency wherein yung adults, like, in the member of the family, the adults continuously oppresses the children. Yan ko yung pinaka-concept. Sabi dito, juvenile delinquency is a product of oppression of children by the adults within the context of the family. So, we all understand that itong mga bata, habang palaki sila, they look up into older people as their mirrors or guide on what is good or bad behavior. Like, merong magkapatid, yung isa nakakatanda, yung isa bata. Kung ano yung nakikita niyang ginagawa ng kanyang nakatatandang kapatid, automatic susundan niya yan. Kahit pa mali or kahit pa tama. Kasi yung bata, natututo pa lang yan. No, kapag yung nakapalibot sa kanya, if the people surrounding him in his immediate family is oppressing the child, then there is something wrong with that really. What happens naturally, according to this theory, is the child will become delinquent. So ano ba yung common example nito? There are several studies on bullying. Okay, yung bullying na yan, that these children who bully their co-children or yung kamag-aral nila, yung kababata nila, are actually also being bullied in their own homes. So parang sa bahay, hindi makadiskarte yung bata kasi palaging pinapagalitan, palaging sinasabing tanga, walang silbi. Kaya paglabas sa bahay, magmamanifest, isa na rin siyang bully. So this is a support for this theory, trying to explain that adults, even younger brothers or older brothers and sisters, have a very big and important role in maintaining a good behavior of a child, which is universally accepted true naman. Just like pag meron kayong nakababatang kapatid, di ba? Sinusundan-sundan ka niyan. Kung anong sasabihin mo, kahit mali yan, sasabihin niya rin yan. Without realizing na mali yan. Until ma-develop yung kanyang behavior based kung anong na-observe niya sa loob ng bahay. Kaya nga sa juvenile delinquency, you'll encounter the idea or principle that yung ugali ng bata is a reflection of what is happening inside his own home or family. Kaya kapag yung bata, mabait yan, magalang, there is a high tendency that inside the home, of course, ganun ang treatment sa kanya. But if the child is abused, the child is not treated with respect or dignity, there is a high tendency that when he interacts with other children, ganun din ang kanyang gagawin. Why? Because the child is not given the chance or opportunity to grow up because he is continuously oppressed by the adults. So there you go. Bakit tinawag natin ito na micro-theory? Well, it is a micro-theory because its scope, yung kanyang sakop or saklaw, is an interaction only within the child and the adults in the family. So, to practice this in our life, so kasi ang gamit ng theory is to help us understand better, di ba? Sa umpisa ng explanation natin, to better understand why children commits crime, why they become CICL. So this theory is trying to warn us that as adults, as models of the younger children, we have to profess good behavior. Because if we show good behavior, yan ang masusundan or susundin ng mga bata. Okay, so that is the differential oppression theory. Now, more on that. Let's go with another type of theory. We call it interpersonal. By the word interpersonal, nandyan na. The interaction of a child or a person in his immediate surrounding environment. So, basically sa family yan. So, we are going to encounter one of the famous theories in criminology, not only in juvenile delinquency, and also one of the famous personalities in criminology, Edwin Sutherland or Sutherland. He is considered as the father of American criminology, and he created this very controversial theory. He calls it differential association theory. Again, ano ba yung root word ng theory na to? There is something wrong, there is something different on how a child associates to adults or other people. So actually, we have already encountered several theories starting with the word differential. So if you encounter the word differential, basically it means there is something wrong, there's something different, there is a problem. So pag sinabing differential opportunity, there is something wrong with the opportunity. Differential oppression, there is something wrong on how the child is being oppressed. Differential identity, there is something wrong with how he identifies himself. Kasi hindi lang ito ang theories na may differential. Maraming theories na nagsisimula ng differential. Now, for the theory of Edwin Sutherland, sabi dito, merong problema kung paano makipag-associate ang isang bata. So, the main concept here, pag nakalagay sa words or in English context is, sabi dito, criminal behavior is learned with interpersonal groups. Kaya sa tinawag na interpersonal theory. Pero in simple words, sabi dito, if a child associates himself with another person or with an adult who is a criminal, then there is a high tendency that the child will also become a criminal. So parang pag-iisipin natin, natural. Kapag yung bata palaging sumasama sa isang magnanakaw, mataas ang tsansa na yung bata na yan magiging isang magnanakaw. Kasi nga nandun yung word na association. Lalong-lalo na kapag yung kanyang sinasamahan is parents niya or tito niya or relatives niya. Mataas ang tendency na ma-adapt niya yung behavior ng adult na yan. For this theory, I always use the example of the principle of a loaf bread. So paano ba yung principle of loaf bread to explain differential association theory? So ganito daw, kuha ka ng dalawang loaf bread. Yung isang loaf bread, lagyan mo ng butter. Yung isa, huwag mong lalagyan ng butter. Now, after nilagyan mo yung isa ng butter, pagsamahin mo yung dalawang loaf bread. After pinagsama mo yung dalawang loaf bread, paghiwalayin mo. And you now try to observe. Anong nangyari sa loaf bread na walang butter? Definitely, nalagyan din siya ng butter. So, that explains the concept of differential association na kapag ang isang bata, sumama siya sa isang nakatatanda na meron siyang mga illegal activities, there is a high tendency that that child will also become a thief or magiging magnanakaw din. Now, this theory can further be explained by his principles kasi nag-create si Sutherland ng kanyang 9 principles. And the most important part here is the following words. 4 yan. Yung una is frequency, duration, priority, and intensity. So, si Edwin Sutherland, inexplain din pala niya na ang pag-commit ng juvenile delinquency or crime, ang pag-commit ng crime, hindi lang yan nag-exist sa lower class. Nag-exist din yan sa upper class. Kasi ang common acceptance noon, crimes are committed in the lower class. Pero sabi niya, no. Crimes also are committed in the upper class society. That is why Edwin Sutherland is credited to create a word. Ano na yung word na create niya? The word white collar crime. He created the word white collar crime to explain a crime that is committed by people of high social status. Yan. Now, to further explain this, sabi niya, ang pagiging kriminal ng isang bata ay nakadepende yan sa frequency ng kanyang learning. So, ano yung ibig sabihin ng frequency? Kung gaano ka-limit or kung gaano kabilis ng makipag-interact siya. Like, yung bata, nag-drop nung high school. Tapos, sumama na kaagad sa kanyang tito. So, mas marami yung time na sumasama sa kanyang tito kaysa sa pag-aaral. So, ibig sabihin nun, the frequency of exposure of the child to illegal acts or criminal people is higher. Now, i-compare mo yan sa bata na Saturday lang or Sunday, pag walang pasukan lang na sumasama sa grupo na magnakaw, mas malakas or mas mataas ang chance na yung bata na sumasama ng maraming beses, magiging criminal siya. The same with duration. Yung duration na ito is yung kung gaano katagal yung kanyang exposure. Even the word priority, yung priority na yan is kung ano yung prioritize niya sa kanyang daily life or lifestyle. Like, yan na palagi talaga ang ginagawa niya. And intensity, yung intensity na ito is kung gaano kagrabe yung activities na kanilang kinakandak. So, take note, to better explain differential association theory, sabi nga natin, in explaining this theory, the frequency, kung gaano kalimit, the duration, kung gaano katagal, priority, kung ano yung inuuna niya, and intensity is kung gaano kalakas yung kanyang learning sa isang illegal activity or criminal person na magkukumit siya ng crime. So that is the explanation of differential association theory. Okay? To summarize, sabi natin, there's something different or there's something wrong on how the child associates with other people. The principle of the Love-Bread. Another theory, still sociological theory, is the social learning theory. This theory is created in the early 1970s. And the proponent is a sociologist in the person of Albert Bandura. Meron siyang dalawang keywords na ginamit. Nandyan yung modeling at nandyan yung observation. So, anong sabi ng theory na ito? Ang activities or ang criminal behavior daw ay napag-aaralan sa dalawang paraan. Una, modeling. Pangalawa, observation. So, to support the claim of Albert Bandura, he conducted an experiment. And he named his experiment Bobodal. Okay, so I believe you encountered this. He called it the Bobodal experiment. So there is a doll. He named Bobo. The doll is actually an inflatable doll. Okay, and this is what happened. So nag-collect siya ng mga bata, more than 66 children, actually exactly 66 children, and he divided them into 3 groups. Okay? So, dinivide niya ng 3 grupo. Now, he exposed these children, 3 groups of children, into different environments. So, ang nangyari, yung unang grupo ng bata, pumasok sila sa isang observation cubicle. Yung cubicle, parang yung laruan ng mga bata, mga play place. Ngayon, sa loob, merong isang nurse. At merong isang doll. Of course, the name is Bobo. Yung Bobo doll, inflatable, na kapag ipapatayo mo, nakatayo. Pero, pag pipilitin mo siyang tumbain, tatayo pa rin siya kasi inflatable. Nilagyan siya ng weight at the middle para pag tumbain mo, babalik at babalik siya, natatayo. Now, yung unang set or group ng children is in-expose nila sa isang environment kung saan nakita nila yung nurse na wala lang, hindi pinapansin yung doll. Parang naglilinis, naglalaro ng ibang toys. Sa isang grupo, sa second group ng children naman, pinakita nila na yung nurse is kinakausap na yung doll. Inaalagaan, inaayusan. And on the third group of children, iba naman ang mangyari. Ang ginawa ng nurse is pinapagalitan niyo yung doll, sinisipa, okay, itinatapon or itinatapon sa ere. So itong mga children, after nilang na-observe lahat ng mga yan, isa-isa nila silang pinapasok sa cubicle na yan, sa play place na yan. And they observe ano ba ang magiging reaction ng mga bata. Naturally, sa unang cubicle, dahil walang ginawa yung nurse sa doll, wala rin ginawa yung mga bata. Sa second na cubicle, Dahil inayusan ng nurse yung doll, kinausap ng maayos, ganun din yung ginawa ng mga bata. On the third cubicle, dahil nakita nila na pagpasok ng nurse, sinipa, sinuntok, mga ganyan, ganun din ang ginawa ng mga bata. So, papasok dito yung concept ng observation and modeling. Na dahil nakita ng mga bata yung nurse na sinisipa, ganun din yung ginawa ng mga bata. Even to the point na yung mga ibang bata, nag-innovate sila kung paano pahirapan yung doll. So, yung isang bata, kinuha yung baril at parang ini-imitate na binabaril niya yung doll. Yung isa, kinuha niya rin parang hammer and sinusubukang tamaan yung doll. So with this experiment, sabi doon, napakalaking impact, okay, yung observational aspect ng mga bata. So kapag yung bata exposed sa environment na violent or there is violence in the environment, high tendency, according to Albert Bandura, ganun din ang gagawin ng bata. So example is yung animated na Tom and Jerry. Pag titignan mo sa mga bata, pag pinapanood mo sa mga bata, nakakatuwa kasi nga it's a comedy, animated pa. So tuwang-tuwa yung mga bata. Pero pag yung content, pag makikita mo yung content, it's a very violent content. So what happens is, okay, tumatanim yan sa isip ng mga bata na yung ginagawa ni Tom kay Jerry, yung ginagawa ni Jerry kay Tom, okay lang pala. So pag may playmate sila, napanood nila yung si Jerry. Kinuha niya yung martilyo, tapos pinukbok niya si Jerry. Anong nangyari? Naging martilyo din si Jerry. Tapos yung bata, pwede pala yun. So pag nakipaglaro, yan, nakita na yung hammer, pinukpok niya yung kalaro niya, tumatawa siya. Kasi sa tingin niya, ganun din ang mangyayari, babalik din sa normal yung kalaro niya. Yan, that's the explanation of this theory on modeling and observation. Trying to warn us that children, okay, are very inquisitive, children are very observant, and children will always model, okay, what is in front of them. So, bigla mong sinabing shit, tapos napakinggan ng bata, naku, automatic sasabihin niya shit, sasabihin niya rin kahit hindi niya alam kung anong ibig sabihin ng word na yan. So yan, that is social learning theory. Again, according to Albert Bandura, children, okay, model their behavior in two means. It's either direct modeling and direct or indirect observation. Yeah, there you go. That is for social learning theory. And this social learning theory is interactional in nature, or interpersonal in nature. Kaya tinawag nila na interpersonal theories. Another set of sociological theories are what we call situational theories. So these theories explain bakit yung mga bata nagkukumit ng crime based on the situation that is presented or given to them. Yan. The main theory that we will encounter here is a theory named drift or neutralization theory, as proposed by these two personalities, David Madsa and Gresham Sykes. So anong idea nito? To simply explain, you have the word drift. So ano bang ibig sabihin ng drift? Well, it's just like in cars or in movies wherein nakita nyo yung sasakyan, diretso, tapos biglang may curve, liliko din yung sasakyan, magdi-drift. Yan. Ano ang connection niyan sa theory na ito? This theory tries to explain that as children or as people, we have the tendency or the ability to abide the rules. And that's the straight path na ginagawa ng car. So lahat tayo, meron tayong sense of obligation to follow the rules. Pero sabi ng theory na ito, but there are also instances that we violate the rules. We drift. Yan. Kaya nga uso yung example na estudyante sa umaga, pag sa gabi, darna. Or pag sa gabi, bugaw. Mga ganyan. Wherein you are good at one time, but you can also be bad So, pwedeng good boy ka, but you can also do bad things. Yan ang explanation ng drift theory. Wherein sasabihin nun, we all have the tendency or we all have the rationality, the morality to follow what is good, to follow the rules. However, we also have the ability to violate the rules or to drift from what is good or from what is normal. Now, bakit nasama yung neutralization? By the way, this is only a single theory. Nakalagay dyan, drift or neutralization theory. Bakit nakasama yung neutralization? Ganito kasi ang mangyayari. As a normal human being, when we commit crimes, after committing something evil or something bad, what do we feel? We feel guilty because we have a conscience. So pag may ginawa tayong mali, nagigilty tayo. Deep in our super ego, we feel guilty. Now, in order to remove that feeling of guilt, we develop techniques. And these techniques, we call them neutralization techniques. Kaya tinawag nila na neutralization theory. So again, gumawa ka ng masama, sabi ng conscience mo, mali yun. So you feel guilty. Now, in order for you to neutralize the feeling of guilt, you develop techniques. Well, basically, these are defense mechanisms. Okay, these techniques are used by you in order for you to eliminate that feeling of guilt. So, tignan natin yung explanation in words. Sabi dito, ito yung una, juvenile sense a moral obligation to be bound by law. Ang mga bata, alam nila, meron silang moral obligation na sundin yung mga batas natin. Pero sabi nga natin, nagdi-drift din ang mga yan. Like, good boy yan, di ba? Sinusundan ko anong sinasabi ng teacher. But at one time, pwede rin naman niyang kulitin yung kanyang kalaro. Lagyan ng bubble gum yung kanyang upuan. Ng tamtax, kunin yung baon ng kanyang kalaro. Pwede rin mag-drift yan. Pero, okay, sabi natin, in order for them to avoid the feeling of guilt, sabi nito, the neutralization values, yan, they can drift back and forth, okay, between legitimate and illegitimate. So, kaya nilang at one time good and then becomes bad. And then goes back again to becoming a good child. Yan. Basically, that is the drift or neutralization theory. Well, there are 5 techniques of neutralization that is presented in our slide. So, yung una is denial of responsibility. By the word denial, hindi niya tinatanggap na kasalanan niya. So, hindi ko yan kasalanan. Kasalanan yan ng kalaro ko. Yan, they are going to neutralize na guilty sila kasi nung paupo sana yung classmate, tinanggal yung upuan, biglang tinanggal. So napaupo siya sa sa sahig. Hindi unknowingly meron pa lang nakausli na bato. Anong nangyari? Nasaktan yung classmate, umiyak. Sabi ng teacher, sinong gumawa nun? And then, if denial of responsibility, they are not going to claim that it is their fault. For them to, again, sabi natin, to neutralize the feeling of guilt. The other here is denial of injury. By the word denial of injury, they're going to deny that the injury is serious. Ganyan, dina-downplay nila. Malayo yan, hindi naman yan, malayo yan sa bituka, hindi yan nakakamatay. Ganyan. Denial of victim, again, hindi naman sila biktima eh. Okay? Kasi sila naman ang nagsimula din. Yung ganyan. Those are neutralization techniques. Okay? Kumbaga nagkaroon ng rambulan, tapos nabukulan yung mga ibang tapos bakit nyo binukulan? Sasabihin nila, pare-parehas lang naman kami. Alam namin na pag mag-aaway kami, may masasaktan. That's denial of victims. The other one here, it's very interesting, is the word condemnation of condemners. By the way, condemnation of condemners, pinapagalitan sila ng mga adults, pero pinababalik nila yung pagalit nila sa nagbibigay sa kanila ng condemnation. Kaya nga sabi dito, condemnation of condemners. You are being condemned. Pinapagalitan ka kasi sinaktan mo yung kalaro mo. Pero, okay, pababalikan mo yung nagko-condemn sa'yo. yung condemner mo, sasabihin mo, baka nung bata ka, mas malala pa yung ginawa mo kaysa sa ginagawa ko ngayon. Yan. Yung example natin dito is yung ano, yung bata nasira niya yung glasses, yung eyeglasses ng kanyang nanay. Okay? Tapos pinagalitan ng kanyang auntie. Bakit mo ginawa yun? Tapos pinabalikan ng bata. Auntie, baka hindi ko alam nung bata ka, marami ka pang sinira ng mga bagay. Yan. That's condemnation of condemners. Now, why do they do this? Bakit nila ginagawa ito? Remember, sabi natin, in order for them to neutralize or to remove the feeling of guilt. Yung panglima natin is the word appeal to higher loyalties. Yan, ano naman ang explanation ng neutralization technique na ito? Appeal to higher loyalties meaning, kapag hindi ko gawin yun, maagrabyado kami. Ganyan. So sabi dito, my friends depended on me. What was I going to do? So bakit mo ginawa yun? Yan. Nakipagbugbugan. Tapos tinanong, bakit mo ginawa yun? Wala eh. Pag hindi ko ginawa yun, kami ang mabubugbog. So sabi doon, higher loyalties. So dinefend niya yung kanyang actions kasi okay, i-rationalize na pag hindi niya ginawa yun, sila ang maagrabyado. Yan. So he's more loyal to the thought that kailangan bago sila mabugbog, unahan na nila. There you go. That is for the anong theory na ito? You have their drift or neutralization theory. Next theory. Okay, another theory this in an interesting theory is yung susunod. We call it societal reaction theory. Actually, this theory is originally known as labeling theory. And I believe you are familiar with the word label or labeling. Ano ba ang concept nito? The concept of labeling theory tries to explain to us that if we give label to a person, a label like tanga, bobo, walang alam, ganyan. Or the most common na you are the black sheep of the family. Okay? Sabi doon, if we give that label, there is a high tendency that that person will also accept the label and will live based on the label that you have given to that person. So there are two personalities that wanted to explain this theory. Ang nauna dyan is Edwin Limert. Yan, he is a famous one. He's famous one because he created two types of or stages of labeling. You have there the primary deviance or primary labeling and the secondary deviance. So sabi ni Limert, meron palang stages ang labeling. Yung una is the primary deviance or the giving of the label. So sabihin mo sa kanya, bobo, wala ka talagang alam. Okay? Hindi ka na lang sana ipinanganak. Yan. What is happening in schools like the word what is that word wherein they're going to classify children according to their achievements. Yan. Merong ganyang term wherein ika-classify nila yung mga star section. Yan, yung mga science section, yung mga achievers. Tapos ika-classify naman nila yung mga slow progress students, yung mga out of school youth, yung mga ganyan. Yan. That is a type of labeling. Okay? O rin na unknowingly, it creates a negative impact on the upbringing of children. Kasi yung nilabel mo na star section, feeling nila, ang galing-galing nila. Yung nilabel mo na poor performing students, syempre, bababa yung kanilang self-esteem. Yan. That's the first stage according to Edwin Lemert. Primary deviance. So you give the label. Or sa loob ng pamilya, sasabihin sa'yo, you are the black sheep of the family. Lahat ng mga kapatid mo, kuya mo, ate mo, matitino sila. Mga nakapag-aral na. Ikaw, hanggang ngayon, drop out ka pa rin. Yan. Parang ikaw lang sa pamilya ang walang magandang nagawa. Yan. That's the giving of the label, the first stage. Now, The second and the most alarming one, as said by Edwin Limert, is the acceptance of the label. So sasabihin na, sabihin nyo pala na bobo ako. Sasabihin nyo pala na ako lang ang pinaka masama. O di sige. Yan. That's the dangerous one because that person who was given the label will accept that label. Now, if you remember in the pillars of our criminal justice system, the fourth pillar, the correction pillar, accepts what we call universally as inmates, or as we call it today, PDLs, or persons deprived of liberty. Upon completion of their sentences, when they serve their sentence, they are reintegrated into the community or to the general public. Now, the word ex-convict is actually a label, a negative label for that matter, which tries to claim that we are not supposed to use the word ex-convict. So yun ang pinopropose ng labeling theory. These labels tend to create stigma on these people. Wherein, instead na ma-rehab sila, hindi na kasi na-isolate na sila sa public. So sabi ni Edwin Limert, in his first proposition of labeling theory, we should avoid making labels, which was further improved by Frank Tannenbaum in his explanation that if the label is given by someone close to the person, mas malakas yung impact ng label kaysa kapag yung nagbigay ng label is a stranger. So again, it's still under labeling theory. Okay? Pero sabi ni Frank Tannenbaum, depende rin pala sa intimacy or level of intimacy yung labeling theory na ito. Kung kakapit yung label or hindi. Like for example, pumunta ka sa CR. Paglabas mo, may nakasalubong ka. Tapos biglang sabi sa'yo, ang taba-taba mo naman. Kapag yung nagsabi sa'yo nun is stranger, hindi mo kilala, ano ang natural reaction mo? Masasaktan ka ba kaagad? Actually, according to this theory, sabi niya, hindi, kasi stranger yan. Baka sabihin mo pa, who you? Diba? That's the natural reaction. Because the person is not close to you. He's only a stranger. But once the person who gave or who will give that label is your immediate family member, or even your loved ones, your boyfriend or girlfriend, and he's going to say, bakit parang sumisikip na ata yung katre? Naturally, it will hurt. Okay? And it will create a negative stigma or negative impact, okay, on your relationships. That is according to Frank Tannenbaum. So sabi niya, the degree of intimacy or relationship of the person giving the label will also determine whether the label will be effective or not. Okay, in summary, this labeling theory, we now call it, as of now, as the social reaction theory or societal reaction theory. Okay, the next theory is on control theories. We are going to encounter here the theory that is known as the social control theory, or famously known as the social band theory, that is proposed by Sir Travis Hershey. Anong sabi ni Travis Hershey? Usually kasi, ang unang ginamit niya ng word dito is band, but it's the same with the word control. Ang explanation niya is, if you have strong band in society, pag meron kang connections o meron kang identity sa society, naturally, you will not become a delinquent. You will not become a juvenile delinquent or an adult delinquent. Kasi you have an identity in the society. You have bond, you have connections in the society. However, if you have no sense of connection, wala yung bond sa society, sabi ni Hershey, dyan daw nagkakaroon ng juvenile delinquency. So it is important for a person to have several layers of connection or even identity, like In your family, you talk with each other. Okay? You are even friends with your family. You share your thoughts, your ideas. You also have your own circle of friends. In school, you participate with school activities, not only academics, and you also have friends in the society. Then, that means you have a strong bond. Tapos samahan mo pa, active ka sa SK. Active ka pag may activities ang barangay, mga societal groups. Meron kang mga membership sa churches. According to Travis Hershey, if you have a strong bond in your society, then you will not deviate. You will not commit deviancy. But once such bond is lost, or such bond is not established, or such bond is disconnected, according to Travis Hershey, you are more likely to commit crimes. Okay, so before we continue further on other theories, just remember that when we started, we explained that these theories are guides, okay, for us to understand better why these people commit crimes. Okay, another theory proposed by Howard Kaplan. This theory is known as the self-derogation theory. Again, by the word self and derogate. Ibig sabihin nun, you have no self-esteem. You have no self-confidence. It's just like the other theories that were discussed, but it's in another way of explanation. So, without looking at the text, how do we explain self-derogation theory? Well, ganito daw. If, okay, sabi nyo, all of us are motivated to maximize our self-esteem. Pakita natin. Yan. Lahat tayo, syempre ang gusto natin, maganda ang tingin natin sa sarili natin. Like, when we wake up, we look at the mirror and we appreciate what's in the mirror. Or we appreciate what we are doing in our life. Okay? That the way we dress. Diba? When we go out, we would like to be dressed the best way possible that we want. So sabi ng self-derogation theory, lahat tayo gusto nating maganda ang ating tingin sa ating sarili. Pero kapag mismong yung pamilya mo ang nagda-down sa'yo, pag yung mismong pamilya mo ang sumisira sa self-esteem mo, yan, it becomes already negative. You will self-derogate. You will pity yourself, you will consider yourself as useless, and so on. So that's according to Howard Kaplan, that juvenile delinquency, or children commit delinquent acts, children become rebellious if the parents or the people who are close to themselves destroys their self-confidence. So kapag yung mga kapamilya, okay, sinisira mismo yung confidence ng bata, that's a parang nagkakaroon ng ano yan, ng effect, babalik, magbubumerang. Okay, na yung bata, ganun din ang kanyang tingin sa kanyang sarili. Okay, so that's the explanation of self-derogation theory. Now, another theory is the interaction theory. Basically, this theory by the word interactional, okay, proposed by Ferenc Thornberry, is almost the same with the theory of Travis Hershey on the bond. So, almost the same. Sabi dito, the weakening of the child's social bond. This time kasi, naka-general yung description niya, the social bond of the child. So it's more concentrated on involvement in outside or extracurricular activities in the society. Self-control theory. So this is a good theory because this is one of the positive theories in juvenile delinquency. Paano siya naging positive? Sabi kasi ng self-control theory, it's the absence of self-control rather than the presence of other factors like poverty that will lead someone to commit crimes. So paano yun? The word there is, it says there, even if you are living in the most deteriorated areas of society, if you have gained proper values and behavior, you will tend not to commit deviancy or crime. So kahit na nasa iyo lahat ng negative factors like poverty, you live in the most deteriorated areas, in the most deprived squatters area, you interact with adults or parents who are bad or even criminals. But it is your self-control, okay, that will not make you become delinquent. So that's the reason why I said that it is a good law or a good theory because it defends the fact that it is actually the control of the person. Okay? He gives absolute faith in the person na ang taong yan, magkukumit yan ng crime kasi wala siyang control. Hindi niya na natutunan ang proper values and behavior. Okay? So that is self-control theory. Other theories, itong culture deviance theory na ito is almost the same with social disorganization. The only thing that is being identified in culture deviance is the independent subcultures. Although halos the same ito. Kasi pag i-explore natin yung word na deviance, there is a deviation of the main culture. Okay, so to better understand, how do we explain subculture? In other books and references, they try to explain it in a simple way, saying that a subculture is a culture within another culture. So, ibig sabihin nun, we have the mainstream culture. Yung main culture, which is accepted behavior. So, it's good. It's accepted behavior that you study, you go to school, you're in a job, have your family. That's the main culture. However, sabi ng subculture, you will create another culture out of that culture. The only bad thing is you deviate with the good culture or the mainstream culture. Kaya nga sabi dito, these subcultures are very unique in nature. Eh, paano hindi magiging unique? Initiation pa lang, unique na yung initiation. Okay? And these cultures, they clash. Okay? They do not go with the main and accepted culture. And that's the explanation of culture deviance. Okay, another theory, rational choice theory. Actually, the rational choice theory is formerly known as the classical theory. So, nandun yung word na rational choice. Rational, our rationality and our choices. So, it's basically the concept of free will. Okay? And this free will is created by the theory, classical theory. So, sabi dito, yung free will, pinalitan lang ng rationality. Yung, kasi sabi ng classical theory, a person commits a crime because he has his own free will, basing on his calculation of what we call as the good or the bad. Okay, whether it is accepted or not accepted. So, sa rational choice theory, ginamit lang nila yung word na rational calculator. Okay, at saka ginamit yung word na risks and awards. Sa old concept ng classical theory, yung ginamit kasi is pleasure and pain. Okay, so pag kukumit ka ng crime, if the pleasure is greater than the pain, in the same manner, rational choice theory, you will commit crime if the reward is higher than the risk. Yan. So that is how rational choice theory is explained. Okay, another theory, this is the final theory that we will cover, is the routine activities theory. Accordingly, the routine activities theory is much basically on victimology theories. Okay, kasi sabi na dito, ikaw ay magiging biktima ng isang crime or ikaw ay magiging mag-commit ng crime if you possess characteristics, okay, that you tend to be easily victimized. Yan, meron kasi siyang 3 elements of victimization, like first, lack of capable guardian. Second, presence of a suitable target. And third is the presence of a motivated offender. So if you want to explore more on this theory, is sabi din, in a simple explanation, ikaw ay magiging biktima dahil, okay, even nagiging paulit-ulit na magiging biktima, it's recidivism. Okay, bakit paulit-ulit kang nagiging not recidivism, repeat victimization, palagi kang nabibiktima kasi you possess the characteristic of a victim. Like sa bahay nyo, palaging nakabukas yung bintana, hindi nakasara yung doors, or pag lumalabas ka, makikita lahat ng mga jewelries, mga valuables. Okay, yung bag mo, careless mo na, then easily you are being victimized. Yan ang routine activities. Meron tayong tinatawag na motivated offender. Okay, meron silang suitable target at meron din silang lack of capable guardian. Yung lack of capable guardian, walang guidance. Okay, coming from parents, okay, or other important people that will guide the child. There you go. This proposed by Cohen and Felson, stating there that crime is a normal function of routine activities of modern living. So yung modern living kasi, we tend to become more lax. Yan. So to summarize, before we end, the theories that were presented, their main purpose is to help us identify, explain, okay, and respond properly on why children are committing crimes. So when you encounter these theories, and when you read scenarios or situations, when you watch the TV, the main focus is to look into the main causes. Bakit nga ba nag-commit ng crime yung bata? Okay, and you can identify them according to the 3 approaches that we have identified. Okay, so there you go. Stop video. Stop video lang mo. In-pause ko. Okay, misbak lang. Okay, misbak.
Dua nga oras na rin.
Ano oras?
Doon sa nga oras.
Ha?
Dua nga oras.